welcome to everybody. I expect we will have a couple of additional people coming in after we get started. Let me just turn that off here. We're glad you can join us this evening, and we're looking forward to our program. My name is Susan O'Handley. I am one of our co-presidents for Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. We refer to ourselves as DOAS, kind of the shortened version. So if you're not aware of that and you hear me say it, I'm referring to the organization, Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. Couple of quick announcements before we get started. First is our optics raffle, which is a fundraiser that we currently have going on to support the DOS sanctuary up at the Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch. We're doing a lot of different things up there and making some changes, and the proceeds from that raffle will offset some of the costs of that. The prizes are 2 different pairs of Nikon binoculars, as well as shoulder harnesses, and then a 3rd place prize is a gift certificate to Wild Birds Unlimited out in Johnston City. And they do have mail capabilities there if you can't get out to that area. And a lot of their products are online as well. Next announcement is that on Friday, we have an amazing young conservationist / photographer doing a presentation on great gray owls. So we hope you will come back and join us for that. Our events are all listed at the website, which is doas.us. Our webinars from the past are all recorded. We are recording this evening as well. So if you miss part of it, or you want to review any of it, or if you'd like to share the video with others for information, we encourage you to please do that. You can find those at doas.us/education/webinars. So you can find it in the drop-down section easily. The presentation for tonight, we're looking at solid waste and recycling and composting and carbon reduction and what our counties are doing. And we hope you all brought some questions with you for this evening. Basically, just to ask a question, our moderators tonight are Becky Gretton and Catherine Davino from the DOAS board. Becky is a co-president as well, and Catherine is our hospitality chair, which we'd be in person in other times doing programs like this, but we're online and virtual as a result, just like so many others are. The presentation for tonight is a follow-up to a climate action program that we had done that talked about steps that you can take within your household to address carbon emissions with a goal of getting to that net zero number in the next 20 years or so. And this particular program, we're going to dig into the solid waste, recycling, and composting portion of that. We do have guests, and for this evening's program, we have our local planner and recycling coordinator for Otsego County Solid Waste Department, Shane Digan. And we also have Tyson Robb, who is the solid waste coordinator in Delaware County. This evening, we're going to start off with Tyson's presentation, and we're going to go right into Shane's from there, and then we will open up for question and answer. To ask a question on the Zoom control panel, you'll see a button that says Q&A. You'll see another one that says chat. We're trying to focus our questions into the Q&A section just so that we can track them and make sure that they get answered. So once the presentations are completed, we're going to go back to that Q&A panel. So as we go, if you think of a question, go ahead and type it in that Q&A section, or ask us a question, or a comment in the chat area, and we'll be monitoring those so that we don't miss them when it comes to that point in the program. So starting things off, we're going to turn it over to Tyson. Tyson, you're going to have to unmute your phone, And I am going to mute mine, and you can go ahead and screen share.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan. So I put together a presentation for tonight. It's very much focusing on Delaware County and kind of boots on the ground, how we tackle the solid waste and recycling here in this county. Give this a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen, and it is now in presenter mode.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. And thanks for the introduction. My name is Tyson. I'm solid waste coordinator for Delaware County. In Delaware County, solid waste is part of the Department of Public Works. And we're very much a solid waste management center. We're not a dump. We do have two landfills actually, but the majority of what we do is manage solid waste in the best way possible. So as an overview, we have a composting facility, we have a recycling center, and then we do have the landfill. We have several transfer stations. We have 8 transfer stations throughout the county that are owned and operated by the towns themselves. And then the county services those transfer stations and consolidates everything down in Walton at our facility. So our goal overall is to provide Delaware County residents with long-term, cost-competitive, environmentally responsible, comprehensive solid waste management services. And that's been our goal for a very long time. I think everybody's familiar with this symbol. Everybody thinks of it as the recycling symbol. I like the graphic that was shared with some of the promotional material for this evening's event. I think we really need to turn this around and make sure we recognize all sides of the recycling symbol. That first of all, that we need to reduce, secondly, reuse materials, and then lastly, recycle. That's kind of the if you can't do anything else with it, I guess recycle it. Although recycling works, and I'll show you why here in just a little bit. But I think part of what we want to talk about was the laws that are governing our activities. So in Delaware County, it's pretty much comes down to the 2 laws. There's the one from 1991 where we don't accept any out-of-county waste. So we just we're very much focused on our own county and managing the materials that are produced in this county. And then we had another law a year later mandating recycling. So it's actually illegal to throw away any recyclable materials. So recycling kind of has 2 portions. There's an opportunity and then there's an obligation. So the opportunity comes in several different forms. I mean, revenues, there's that. If you're operating a recycling center, you actually generate jobs. So you're providing a local economy in that way. And then for us, really the big win is that we don't fill our landfill up. So we're trying to save our landfill for generations to come. Once we run out of space, we're out of space. And then we have to ship everything. Like most other folks, there's not many landfills in New York State left. We're kind of running out of space to put them. And we're really focusing on getting to that net zero number. So recycling can be viewed in a lot of different ways. The easiest way to look at it would be looking at the big 5. So that's looking at metals, cans and aluminum and steel, ferrous, non-ferrous, and plastics, as well as corrugated cardboard, mixed papers, and glass. Those are kind of the big 5 recyclables when you think of recyclables typically in your household. Again, we break each one of those down into other categories for remarketing, for sales. But typically that's what you would throw in your bin. And they have varying end uses for each one of those things. So plastic products might become lumber, like a Trex, or furniture, those kind of things. It might even become carpeting, or clothing is actually made out of recyclables quite a bit. And then a portion of those, of course, might go into being another recyclable container. Your fiber products, they might become blown-in insulation, or another fiber product, another cardboard box turning into a cardboard box if the quality is good enough. And there's several different things involved with the quality of recycled paper, wax content, plastic content. Those all will degrade the quality of that recyclable material and make it less opportunity for it to become another box. That type of fiber ends up becoming like hand towels and that kind of thing, which is kind of the end of its life as a renewable resource. So our recycling facility is actually pretty new. It was built about 5 years ago. We have a manual sort line as opposed to using any computers or those kind of things. There is some automation, so it'll separate out cardboard, ferrous metal, so magnetic metal, aluminum, all on its own. But you can see here in the picture, we have 7 or 8 different products that we separate out by hand. And we can run this facility either as single stream or dual stream. All of our facilities are set up as being dual stream, meaning that we don't mix our paper and our plastics. We keep those separate, which creates a cleaner product. So if you live in Delaware County and come to a transfer facility, you'll see that we ask you to put your paper in one spot, your cardboard in another, and then your bottles and cans in another place. And that just keeps our material cleaner. Although we do service our curbside pickup and all the haulers in Delaware County as well, where that material is then commingled. So we can process that as well. So this is kind of a photo, it's an older photo, but it's a photo of the end material that we come up with. You can see we got milk jugs, we've got cans, various recyclable items. We separate these out and we store them till we have bulk loads, meaning that we sell 20 tons at a time, or 40,000 pounds, which makes us a player in the recycling market. You know, if you could do this on your own, you could do your own sorting. That's great, but it's very hard to find a market when you have such small amount of the commodities. It really takes a lot of people to grab a market share and attract the attention of brokers and mills. So another portion of recycling would be things that are less traditional, but are definitely recyclable, or things that can be remanufactured. Computers, batteries, motor oil, bulk scrap metal, antifreeze clothing, and Freon are all good examples of those. So they're not necessarily that we're taking that product and making another product out of it. We're using that product, dismantling it, or reconfiguring it in a way that's marketable or reusable. Yeah, Freon is just some examples. We end up with quite a few batteries, a whole lot of electronics. The Freon just keeps coming. The electronics is not dwindling off. We're getting more and more of those. The clothing is great because it's reusable. We use several different companies, and the first thing that they go through the clothing and they grade it. You know, so things that are able to be resold, donated, reused in any kind of way, they do that. And then everything else gets turned. It either goes into like cloth rags, or it ends up being insulation, or like those packing blankets, like your moving blankets, are made out of clothing fiber as well. Motor oil, scrap metal, there's lots of opportunities to recycle that. And there's certain things that the state has mandated that we recycle that are actually very much less recyclable, or they have less value, let me say that, and they're harder to recycle. So tires is one of those things. I think Shane probably recognizes this, and everybody else in the industry recognizes that the price of tire recycling is getting higher and higher every year. So we've come up with, over the years, a few creative ways to try to use tires. So this is one example of using tires underneath a road. So this is a county route that was constructed quite a while ago, but they put these tire chips down as a drainage layer and also as an insulator, and it works great. That section of the road is doing very well. Almost makes me wish that we were building more roads, but we're kind of not. We're just maintaining the roads we have now. So the opportunity to reuse tire chips in this way has dwindled for the county, but the road still stands. It's been there for 15, 20 years now, and it's doing great. Another way that we use the tires is in landfill construction. So we'll use them as a drainage layer underneath. So all of our landfills now are double composite liner systems. which I believe they have never failed yet. There's no example of a failed double composite liner system in the US, which is good to hear. But anyway, so we put down this double composite plastic liner system, and then we put down the tire trips as a drainage layer. So any leachate that comes down through the waste will be collected in that area. And so we can use those in place of stone, and that's a good use for them as well. Or for packing leachate or landfill gas collection lines. That's another way that we can reuse them. Again, just it's something that's helpful when you're doing it. We're not always making new landfills, so it's only practical from time to time. Another type of recycling that we do is with our construction demolition debris. We actually have a different definition than a lot of places. In Delaware County, we consider any bulky debris construction demolition debris. So you can see on the right-hand side of the picture, that's kind of this is our C&D cell, which is really just a transfer facility right now. But the material on the right-hand side is all this bulky, kind of fluffy, light stuff. Everything that would end up just off the side of the screen here gets processed and size reduced and moved up, and we use it for an alternative daily cover. So in our landfill cell, to keep any wildlife or smells off, we cover it up with a C&D material that's blended with contaminated soils. So the contaminated soils stay on the liner, and we're able to reuse both of those materials in a good way, as opposed to the other way to do alternative daily cover is to just use clean soil, but then it ends up being wasted. So we treat our C&D as a recyclable as well to some degree. Delaware County also has a innovative composting system that's quite large. So this building, for reference, is about 3 acres. On the left-hand side, you're seeing a biofilter, which is where we force all the air through this area. And here's kind of a rough schematic of the area. If it wasn't COVID, I'd invite you all down for a tour, perhaps maybe next year or within the year we'll be able to do that. But it's a pretty neat place to see. So it's a MSW sludge co-composting unit. And it was created to handle the sludge in the county as we have quite a bit of it. On average, in a day, we feed about 80 tons of municipal solid waste and 18 tons of biosolids, which is quite a bit. So that's working out pretty well. Here's a few photos of the area. You can see that you know, getting folks to really sort the material is a big deal. So we don't end up with bulky debris or batteries or electronics into our waste. We really want people to follow our system and be educated into our system. We can go over these photos later, but that's just kind of an overview. So the compost that we produce is really high in organic matter. It's great for a mulch, a turf blend, landscaping, or as a soil amendment. We get a lot of requests from DOT projects and industrial development sites where they're trying to build up organic matter and create a vegetative cover quickly. That's how we use most of it. And then as a last resort, we do have the landfill, but we try to put as little amount of waste in there as possible. If you can see from the photos, most of the things that end up in the landfill are kind of sludges that aren't suitable for composting, and then film plastic. Film plastic, although New York State came out with this plastic bag ban law, which helps out quite a bit. So we're seeing less of them, but it's really hard to recycle the films, if not impossible. And so that's kind of what goes into the landfill. The other thing that we do with the space, though, is we try to have a rain cover on as much of it as possible. If you can see in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see some tires holding down a tarp, which covers up the landfill and makes it so that we have less leachate and more clean water runoff. So back to the beginning, recycling is an opportunity, but it's also an obligation. It's an obligation because we have a responsibility to future generations. And also we have these systems that have been put in place that need to be guarded. So for instance, we have this clean sweep or a household hazardous waste day, which is an opportunity for anyone to get rid of any chemicals, any hazardous waste that we really don't want in the landfill. And we try to advertise that as much as possible and have people take advantage of that. So there's a number of different ways that you can help. So recognizing and using the opportunities that are available for you, understanding those opportunities and understanding that the recycling is not necessarily the same everywhere. The definition changes slightly depending on where you are. So it's important to get a hold of your local representative, whether that's me or Shane, or if you're joining us from elsewhere, reach out to someone within your county to make sure that you're working within their system. And then also you can buy recycled products as much as possible, as opposed to getting those white paper towels. Maybe try the brown ones, because there's that recycled fiber is in those. So you're supporting the recycling industry when you utilize those products. So there's a couple things where we could use some help in recycling. There used to be an electronic stewardship program that still exists, but in a very much lesser form than it used to. So I could see that becoming an issue in the future. That's kind of a broader level goal. And then also expanding recycling markets for glass and tires. Those two things are very hard to get rid of. Although glass is a great product, it's BPA, PD, it's BPA free. It's a great reusable product. It's just not very recyclable. It's very heavy and has very low value on the recycling market. There's a paint stewardship program that's kind of gone quiet, but I believe that's still on the books to begin. So that program would allow you to return your paint to the store in which you bought it in. And so that'll be a neat thing. Most of what we see at our household collection day is paint. So if you can get rid of it at the time that you're using it, you didn't use the whole gallon, take it right back to the store. It's a much more efficient way to go. And then there's also a organics recycling mandate that's coming up beginning of next year. So if you're in Delaware County, you're already composting. And there's a couple of industries that we're working with to make sure that they get their food waste recycled. On the statewide level, the mandate really just applies to large food producers, but it should be a good thing. Here we remove about half of the weight of the MSW through composting. As you think about the heavy things are, your banana peels, it's a lot of water weight, really. All those things get composted. And yeah, I think that's all I had. Feel free to reach out to me through my county email if you'd like to get a hold of me, any specific questions, or on here in just a moment after Shane takes over.
Thank you, Tyson. Over to you, Shane.
Thank you. I will just share my presentation here. So I am Shane. I am basically Tyson's equivalent in Otsego County, where I work for the Planning and Solid Waste Department. Unlike Delaware County, we are a joined Planning and Solid Waste Department, so half my time I'm doing the Planning Department stuff. It's a little bit different in that sense, but I'll get right into it. Tyson sort of already went over a lot of this, so some of this I may be quick, but there's many different types of waste. Obviously, today's topic, we're mostly focusing on recycling and composting, but there's many different types of waste, and they depending on where you live, they end up in different spots. So, for example, Delaware County has a recycling program for construction and demolition debris. We do not. So just as an example. So waste generation, I'm going to give you a little more of a broad scale view of this. Organics make up roughly 32% of waste. So, or even higher, I guess Tyson's data says 50% he's pulling out. Recyclable material makes up to 50% of waste generated, and most waste in the United States is still landfilled. And I think these graphs are sort of telling to look at. If you look at map 2.1 at the top, waste generation per capita, and also at 3.23, you can see that the US has a decently high waste generation per capita rate, above, it looks like 2.24. We're behind Bermuda in North America, but we are very high. And if you look at figure 2.3, you can see the US, the waste generation per capita is quite high amongst both developed nations and nations in general. Globally, as in the US, most waste is landfilled. We have a lot of recycling. However, as you can see from this graph, much of the world still uses open dumping, meaning they don't have really a landfill. They just have pits in the ground where they throw waste, or an area where they just throw waste. That still is a large part of the world. Many communities still use incineration. We do not here. I don't believe Delaware County does, but some use incineration and composting and the rest. So in Otsego County, when we talk about diversion rates, that is the amount of material. The way I'm talking about it in this sense is the amount of material total and the percentage of that actually gets pulled out for recycling. So you can see we're pretty low in Otsego County. I'm sure Delaware has us beat here, as they do in many ways in the solid waste world, but we're pretty low. We're at about 10%, 10 to 12% in an average year. The methods of the diversion, single stream recycling. So we pull out, your plastics, cardboard, all that. Electronics recycling we do have a mattress recycling program, polystyrene, aka styrofoam. Paint, we have through hazardous waste day, people can bring paint. And then we have some miscellaneous items. I will get to in a bit how we're working to improve that. But the problem from waste and carbon is that it has a much higher impact than normal emissions. And this is what we wanted to talk a little bit about today, is the impact on climate change and carbon emissions. So in waste generation, there's a lot of different ways where it contributes to climate change. The first part is that for things to be produced, it takes energy to produce them, right? So if you're constantly buying items that need to be produced and not reused, that's just going to create energy, shipping, manufacturing, all that. But almost one of the more important things from our perspective is the landfill emissions. We don't have a landfill in Otsego County, but all of our garbage does go to Ontario landfill right now. Delaware County has their own landfill. And methane is the primary. There's what we call landfill gas, LFG, and methane makes up roughly half of that, with carbon making up the other half approximately. And the problem with methane, as you probably all are aware of, is it's much more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. It's about 70, a simple way to put it is about 72 times as effective. So that's where it becomes clear quite quickly just how important getting a handle on solid waste is for climate change. So I have a stat here. Typically 1 million tons of landfill waste emits approximately 432,000 cubic feet of landfill gas per day. And then it gives you the amount of energy that can generate. In addition to that, landfills emit leachate, which is kind of a fluid. Many poor countries are located near waterways of the ocean, and a lot of that leachate can leak in. We have some regulations, where we can site landfills in New York, but that is a problem globally. This is the chart I just put in compares different countries and the tons of CO2 per year from the waste generated. So the high income countries, that's where we are a part of, the dark blue. As you can see, we are producing a lot. I don't have the specific number for the United States handy, but you can just see that it is an issue. So as I was saying, this just sort of sums that up. Recycling saves energy. It uses less energy often than producing from virgin material, which is material that is being created. And you can just read through this chart. I don't want to go through everything there, but there's some solutions to the problem of waste and climate change, and there's some ways that Tyson touched on. I just want to reiterate a lot of them here. Product stewardship, which basically is a term that means the producer is responsible. Sometimes we call it extended producer responsibility, EPR. So in New York State, we have a paint, Tyson mentioned the paint legislation going through, I believe. Paint manufacturers are going to have to recycle paint coming up. I believe that's January 2022 or November of this year. E-waste, so we do have an e-waste recycling program, and there has for some time been a sort of a subsidy for, put it in a simple way, batteries, pharmaceuticals, and mercury thermostats. Another solution is product bans. New York State has a plastic bag ban that helped pull a lot of plastic bags out of our landfills and out of the recycling system. And there's also a polystyrene ban, AKA styrofoam, that is going into effect, I believe, January 2022. So another solution is to remember the waste hierarchy. This was on the image for the event that we promoted. And it's if you can only remember one image, you can obviously think of the 3 R's, but then think about this. So the most preferred option at the top there is prevention. Just use less stuff if you can, right? If you can, use a towel and not a paper towel, things like that. Use less items if you can. Second is or prevent the need to use items. I suppose would be prevention, and then reduction is to reduce the amount you use. And then recycling is effective. It's more effective in some areas than others, but material does get recycled in Otsego or Delaware. It's not just getting dumped in a landfill and we're lying about it. Recovery, so anaerobic digestion, which we didn't really get into much, ways to recover energy from material, composting, things like that. And then the least preferred option would be disposal, landfill. Another solution is organics and composting. A lot of that methane, as you can predict, is as a result of organics in the waste stream. And so if you live in Delaware County, you're lucky because they have a pretty advanced system down there where they pull out the organics and compost a lot of directly from trash. We don't have that in Otsego County. So when you put something in the trash, that's how it gets delivered to the landfill. There's no, it pretty much just gets dumped into different trucks along the way, but it ends up in the landfill as you put it in the trash. So it's important to compost as much as you can because that's not happening, at least here. Certainly, we can hope to be like Delaware County someday. But so there's different, there's different systems, different ways governments do it. I don't want to get into this too much. I will say that Otsego County is looking into this type of system right at the top left. Upcoming, I'll try to be quick here because I think I've been droning on. The Otsego County Mandatory Source Separation and Recycling Law. It's something that Delaware County has been enforcing recycling for some time, as you mentioned, the 1992 law. We have a law in the books as well, but it looks like no one's been paying attention to it because we haven't really been doing a great job enforcing recycling. And something I realized since joining the department. So we have redrafted a brand new law, and it's sort of in committee process right now. So, but that is happening, and that will introduce for the first time a hauler licensing system in our county, and it will reinforce mandated recycling. New York State polystyrene ban, as I mentioned. We have a Waste Smart business certification that actually is just approved today to recognize businesses. We work with the Otsego County Conservation Association on different events such as Earth Festival, where they collect different odd items for recycling. We have annually, we didn't have it in 2020, but we will have it in 2021, a compost bin and rain barrel sale. And then we have Household Hazardous Waste Day, similar to Delaware County, where we collect hazardous waste. And I will stop, and hopefully there's enough time for questions. Susan?
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Definitely great information. We do have a couple questions. Catherine, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. Now, these questions that I've got here came in actually when Tyson was speaking, but I don't know who's going to answer. I'll let you guys decide. So the first question was, if, plastics number 1 and 2 are recyclable, while the others are not, is it possible to get manufacturers to use these materials rather than the number 3 through 7?
I can take a stab at this first, and feel free to jump in, Shane, if you got something to add. No, some of the other, numbers that are indicated on there, some of them are also recyclable. I put up a short list. I didn't associate numbers necessarily with the items that I listed underneath plastics. The most valuable plastic is milk jugs. So your natural HDPE, that'll sell. That market has gone through the roof this year. It's the most it's ever been. And secondly, you get your pigmented HDPE that's got a color tint to it, like your dishwashing or your washing liquid.
Yeah, I was gonna say laundry detergent bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, that one. And well, I try to use the cardboard one, so I don't. But then there's a number of other ones. Peat sells very good. There's definitely a market for that. Something I think I put on the slide was tubs and lids. That's really like 5s through 7s. But that recycling symbol does not necessarily have a regulation. You don't need to get certified to put that on your product. So companies are putting a recyclable symbol on things that aren't necessarily recyclable, and that's a problem. That's a problem for the waste community. That's a problem for consumers who are trying to be responsible. That can be an issue. But most plastic things are recyclable.
Can I also add another question to that? So if I put something in my plastic that has no number on it at all, am I making a mess for you?
Likely.
Yeah, okay.
But not always. So on that one slide, I think I also listed some mixed rigids. Mixed rigids is the way that I put it. So that would be like your trash bin or your laundry hamper or something like that. Well, we also sell those. Again, lesser value, but it may or may not have a recycling symbol on it. So we kind of have to, we call it a MRF, the Material Recovery Facility. We have sorters who are really, really experienced in what we have a market for and what we don't. So they make that final call.
Okay.
But it can't be for private MRF. So we're a public MRF and we have the landfill right there. For a private MRF, that residual, that stuff that is not recyclable ends up being a waste, and that ends up being a cost to that MRF. So the cost of recycling in New York State has gone up exponentially because they have to dispose of material that is not recyclable.
Okay. So
does that make sense? I kind of glossed it over because we have a unique system, but that is a problem. Please don't try to recycle things that aren't recyclable.
So I guess I should just put it in the trash, is what you're saying then, right?
Call Shane.
Check on the item. But what I was going to say is, Tyson mentioned that they have a public MRF. So Otsego County functions with a private MRF in Albany. So that's one difference of systems there.
Okay.
So that is one reason the costs have gone way up, for sure.
Okay, I have two more. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna add. I think that the cost of recycling per ton is actually quite a bit more than the cost of disposal now, as a result of the recycling markets being variable, national sort, or like when China stopped accepting material from the rest of the world because there's so much contamination in it. So China didn't stop accepting recyclable material. What they did is they said, we don't want any trash in it. And nobody can meet that standard.
Yeah.
So by default, it's all the trash that's in the recyclable that shut down that outlet, which then kind of crashed the market in 2018 or so. But it's been rebounding. We need to manage these recyclables locally instead of shipping them around the world.
Okay, so I have a second question. This says, do the private trash haulers actually segregate recyclables? She sorts plastics and metals in one container and then paper in another, but she's not sure if the materials are actually just dumped together in the truck. So what are they doing? Should she even bother continuing to separate them?
Well, I can answer on that for if she lives in Otsego County. Right now I can't promise you what they're doing. That's one of the reasons we're working on this law, is we do know a lot of haulers are not recycling. What I will say is, assuming they are, they're only going to be separating out single stream recycling from garbage. So if you're putting out your metal and glass and cardboard in separate containers, that is getting mixed. From haulers, we just accept single stream. There's really no way that they drop that off separate. But so on that, if that answers that.
Okay, so she should probably not bother then, because it's
Well,
just,
definitely separate your recycling from your trash and make sure your hauler is taking that separately, for
okay,
sure.
okay.
I have a similar question from someone who is unable to use the Q&A. I was surprised to hear that glass doesn't have a market, is less valuable. Is this as a result of single stream? Are there regrets to going that route and getting people used to not having to pre-sort their materials?
Well, in Delaware County, we've stayed in that sorted system, at least at our transfer stations and at our main facility. So on curbside, everything gets mixed together, and the glass does end up everywhere. So if you came into the MRF, the floor would be coated in like kind of glitter. You'd see it everywhere, little crushed up little tiny pieces of it. It hasn't had a market for a long time. It's not necessarily a result of any programmatic changes. It's just a result. It's the energy balance, is the way that I understand it. It's easier to make a nice, clean, new bottle out of raw material, sand, than it is to take a dirtier material, such as a glass bottle that might have a label on it.
Right.
It's harder, and also the different colors. So I don't know if anybody remembers, it used to be that you would separate your glass into brown glass, blue glass, clear glass.
Mhm.
And that was a way early on when they tried to recycle glass, but the energy balance, the way that I understand it, the energy balance did not make sense for the companies to recycle that material. So glass is a great material. It's just, it's so heavy. And it ends up so dirty once you get the labeling and the residue on there. It's very hard to turn glass back into another glass bottle.
And I'll just add in, Tyson, I don't remember if I ever told you this, so I hope I'm certainly not keeping it from you, but we actually do have a pretty good glass market in Otsego through Andela Glass, or Ruby Lake Glass in Richfield. But to be clear, when you put your glass out in your bin, you put your just recycling, in your recycling bin, that glass does not go to Ruby Lake Glass or Andela. That does get mixed in. We only have it separated out for residents, but we are, anyone on here, if you do take your recycling into the transfer station, one of the either Cooperstown or Oneonta, and we're working to spread it to every town station, but separate the glass helps a lot. Saves a lot of money.
I gather glass for my neighbors and take it to Andela all the time. Good stuff.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question. What types of trash bags should households use for non-recyclable waste? Should the bags be compostable or biodegradable? And if so, where can they be purchased?
In Delaware County, that would be preferable if they were biodegradable. I'm not sure where you would purchase them, but they don't, I think they're pretty hard to purchase a fully compostable bag. They have these bioplastics that'll break down really quickly, but it's not really fully compostable. We have trommels set up where we separate that stuff out. I don't have a paper bags. That would be the best thing in Delaware County. I believe that would not be the same for Otsego County though. Because that carbon, if that carbon went directly into a landfill, that would then turn into landfill gas.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really make it. Either way is kind of has a downside. So.
Right. All right. Let's see. Where do the hazardous materials go after you collect them? I guess like on a clean sweep day, maybe. I think.
I'll just answer it quickly, and then Tyson can hop in. We just we contract with for general hazardous waste. For most of the items, we contract with a third-party vendor that takes that and has a facility where they recycle it. And I could give you a detailed, I could go item by item, I could try, but the batteries get recycled through a different vendor. Our medications get handled by the DEC. So kind of different areas. But Tyson, you might have a better answer for that.
No, Delaware County does a very similar thing. The material it's when you bring it in, it's separated. Some of it, so the paint, they'll go to a paint recycler if they can repigment that, or if they can remark it, or that material, they'll do that. For instance, if there's each material is handled differently though. There's these broad categories. There's like 12 different broad categories, and each one is put to its highest and best use.
Okay. Becky, do you have any more at all in there that you want to do? I see that there's stuff in the chat, or is that all answered?
I don't have any new things in the chat.
Okay, because there's a couple more here. Okay, so what about thin, clear plastic frequently found in packaging?
I don't have a market for that material, unfortunately.
Now, isn't that something that you could, like, I know, let's say, for example, Walmart and Price Chopper collect the plastic bags and all those films that go around, like your big bundle of toilet paper and paper towels. Isn't that what that is? And what happens to that?
Well, the films, well, the only outlet I found for the films is Trex. So like the decking company that makes the plastic decking. And yeah, so that's for the film. But the plastic that you might see in a window of a toy box, for instance, that's a different material. So your plastic bag is stretchy. So the elasticity, the stretchiness, so those are longer carbon chains. Whereas the plastic that you get in the front, the window box in a toy insert or something like that, that doesn't really stretch. So those are shorter carbon chains. It's a different material. But I would recommend those retail outlets for film recycling, and highly recommend utilizing them.
Okay. We have a few more. Let's see. Why can we no longer burn trash in certain counties? Is it really more dangerous to the environment than landfills? I remember my grandparents used to have a burn barrel for their trash.
Well, I'd assume part of that, I don't really know. I don't have a great answer, but I would assume part of that is just fire hazard risk from burning trash. But
I can answer this one.
Okay.
Basically, we did some programming on trash burning in Otsego County a bunch of years ago here. Basically, it is definitely more dangerous to the environment, particularly because your trash barrel doesn't burn at a high enough temperature to actually eliminate the chemical particulates. So things from, glossy printed papers, plastics, and things that really shouldn't be burned in the first place, that particulate matter, travels through the air and lands in soil and becomes a persistent chemical that doesn't disappear. It impacts food chains and wildlife and gets into water, and yeah, it's definitely more dangerous. And there are laws now, I believe, state regulations that prohibit burning in New York State. So hopefully that answered that. If you have more questions, feel free to contact me, and I'll go back to my notes and research it again.
Okay.
I did miss a couple of questions in chat, unfortunately.
Go ahead.
So here's a question. Are aluminum foil, pie plates, etc. recyclable? What about the bags in cereal boxes? Plastic caps that don't have recycling symbols? What's on the horizon for local recycling?
Well, there was a lot there. The aluminum foil and pie plates, we do recycle those in Delaware County. It's a much lower grade aluminum than compared to like your aluminum cans or something like that. But we do recycle them. The bags and cereal boxes, that's a hard one. I don't think so. I think same thing, like your plastic film that you're taking back to your retailer. That's that stretchy material, that bread bag material that really stretches really good. So that elasticity is marketable, whereas the inside the cereal box bag, I don't think would be. And the plastic caps are too small for us to bail and find a market for. If you remember the photo of the material that we're selling, it doesn't. Those would not. Right. They wouldn't make it.
Yep, same thing here. I would just say that the only thing I would add a corollary to that is some people get very paranoid about removing all the caps off their plastic bottles, and it's not a crisis. If a bottle has a cap on it, doesn't mean the whole bottle is necessarily going to get thrown out. But yes, it is better to take those off. Yeah.
Okay.
But because they're too small.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, you may have addressed some of this one, but there are new items in it. Are there certain types of plastic film that should not be included in the plastic film recycling boxes at most grocery stores or elsewhere? For example, thick plastic bags, dog food bags, or bubble wrap. So.
I'd say bubble wrap is pretty similar.
So that's a yes? Okay to recycle? Or yeah.
It's hard because we generally don't. We would encourage you to take that material to the producer.
Right.
So that's going through the producer responsibility recycling. So as such, I haven't really nailed down what specifically is okay to go in there and what's okay not to. I mean, generally, it's the bags you used to get at the store. It's your bread bags. That type of material is what they're looking for.
I think what they mean by the thick plastic bag is like, what if you go to Macy's or something and they give you a sturdier plastic bag often, to go out with your product. So it's not as filmy. So would you say that's really not something you want?
Certainly not something we want at the transfer station, but I don't think the stores accept that type of stuff. It's usually just the single material, bendable, stretchable plastic film. Do you agree with that, Tyson?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I think so. But definitely not like those woven bags for like your animal feed bags. Those are completely different.
Okay. Somebody asked, oh wait, did I miss it? Hold on. Oh, does Shane's response about trash haulers in Otsego County include Casella, or do they handle trash versus recycling differently?
Well, I don't want to get in the game of pointing out particular haulers. Obviously, I can't do that, and I don't want to. But I will say that it's when trying to learn if your hauler recycles or not. First, just ask them. Most of them they'll tell you. But if you really don't believe them or whatever, you can look in their truck, and if you look in the back, some of them have a split truck, and some of them just have two different trucks. And the way they're split sometimes different. Sometimes like Casella, most of their trucks, maybe all of them, they're just the traditional garbage truck where the back end is split. There's a recycling side, a garbage side. Some of them have modified trucks where sort of the back is garbage, and then by the cab is where they put recycling. So just watch where they're putting it. And if you don't know, like if you just think, wow, I have this hauler and my friend has this hauler and they're not recycling, I tell people you have to submit, you have to actually let me know, because you think someone else is going to do it, but no one does it. So you have to actually submit send me an email, call me, and we can look at their data. We can look at what, how much recycling they dropped off on a particular day at a particular location and sort of guesstimate from there. And in terms of enforcement of that, right now there's really barely any. We're not really enforcing much. There is a fee we have if haulers bring in greater than 25%. If their garbage has greater than 25% recycling, there is a fee, but we're working on the enforcement piece. I think Delaware County's probably, Tyson will probably attest, already has that down. But I expect by 2022, we'll have the hauler licensing and enforcement piece down. So that won't be as much of an issue.
I have a
No,
question.
Shane, it's something that we struggle with as well. It's a constant battle.
I have a question that was pre-submitted, if this is the right time. It says there is a web app called Chip Drop that connects people who need wood chips and people who need to get rid of wood chips. It is a free app, and I've heard great things about both users getting benefits. However, it is not used locally at all. I was wondering if our counties could get involved in utilizing this app or offering something like it. And or encouraging tree companies you contract with to use this app for an additional service to the community. Okay, that's the end of the question.
I can take a stab at this first. We don't use the app, but we've had somewhat of an app developed over the years. You could just give us a call and let us know that you're looking for. We have a couple of things that we use that are waste products to our highway crews. So that would be, the wood chips, firewood. If we're cutting alongside of a road, we might be chipping, we might be creating firewood. And then also if we're ditching, if we go through and we're clearing out ditches, that ditch dirt has to go somewhere. And for our crews and for our purposes, that's a waste product. So what you would do in Delaware County is just give the highway department a call, 607-832-5800, I believe. And they can put you on a list. And so when they're close, they'll let you know, and they're looking for a place to take the stuff. Because it's a waste product, and we don't want to haul it from place to place. In our solid waste facility, we utilize the material, but we're not actively bringing it in from our own operations. We're trying to leave that in place, so we don't have to haul it.
I would say in Otsego, you could also give me a call or let me know, and I could find a spot for it. But in terms of the app, it sounds like this is some sort of like, if people are looking for wood chips and someone else has them, I have them here. We, at least from our perspective, we're always open to, apps like that. We have a current app called What's Good. It's not our department, but it's through the our ag coordinator. I forgot his exact title, but Jim Barber's working on it. The Ag Implementation Committee, and it's basically for food. So farmer, you can order food on the app and you pick it up. Farmers, it's kind of like instead of having to wait at a farmer's market, they can just drop off their food. You pick it up. You don't even have to. It's contactless. Anyway, so yeah, we're always open to it. I will look into that, but we don't have anything like that being promoted right now.
Okay. Let's see. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to throw it out there. The question is, are there opportunities to recycle hard plastics such as plastic cutlery, plastic caps you already addressed for sure, or sunscreen cosmetics tubes? I'm going to say maybe you're going to say no, but
I will say no in terms of, putting on your recycling bin, definitely don't do that. But we do have a program that EarthFest, OCCA, I mentioned, Otsego County Conservation Association puts on. Where they accept a lot of these unique items, and I think they use, Susan might be able to correct me, but I believe they use TerraCycle as the main vendor for a lot of those materials. So you can also go to their website directly, but that will be happening April 24th at the Meadows office building in Cooperstown. So I don't think the list has been published yet in terms of what exactly they're taking, but it's usually a lot of those items that you mentioned.
okay.
Yep, I expect that information about that event is going to be coming out soon, and we will help promote that detail on our website and through our social media and e-news channels as well.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, just a little point of order. Charlie Scheim wanted to let you know that New York State Film Recycling Info specifically mentions cereal box bags as being classified as quote unquote film plastics, and so should be eligible for film plastic recycling.
Good.
Okay, and let's see, just a couple more. Could households help with waste management by having their own compactors for cans, plastic bottles, etc.? Home compost bins?
home compost bins, definitely. So composting your yard waste and any organic material you're producing through your kitchen, your coffee grounds, those kind of things are great. And specifically in Delaware or in Otsego County, but also in Delaware County, the less material we need to move around, the better. But as far as the compaction goes, that's we rely on the material that we're receiving at the MRF, for the material recovery facility, the recyclable material. We rely on that being very loose and easily sorted, so that we can go through and sort it and pick out what materials we want to segregate with what other materials, and that does change over time. So it's just helpful to. It's nice that we have a physical sort line where we have people that we can retrain as to cater to the market as that changes. So keep those materials loose. It's very important. Unbagged. People have a tendency to want to tie things together, like milk jugs and those kind of things. They want to tie them all together and make like these rafts and then recycle it. Don't do that, please.
Okay. All right. I think I have one more. Is there a curriculum for grade schools that teaches children about recycling? When I was a child in the 50s and 60s, there were anti-littering campaigns. These days, it seems that there is more trash on the roadsides and sidewalks. It seems like there is no longer an emphasis on teaching responsibility for the environment to children. So I don't know if you guys know about any curricula that are being utilized.
I don't know if, I mean, I'm really not aware of education curriculum around that. What I will say is that we do, again, with OCCA, we have worked with schools. Like last year, we had a plastic film recycling challenge in Otsego County. So we do try, I always offer, I'll print flyers for any school that wants them, that, I'm available for them. What I will say, just on the know in general, how recycling has gotten seemingly worse, I'm hesitant to put all that blame on the individual, because I think that for the most part, I think people tend to be pretty good about recycling from their home, people that do it. I don't think it's important to educate, and I know people do mess up, and it is a problem, but I think one of the bigger problems is oftentimes there just isn't recycling. I mean, think about, you go to Stewart's in the morning, right? Or you go to a gas station. I don't know, Stewart's, they're all the same. You go to a gas station, there's usually no recycling bin, right? I mean, so that's where a lot of the trash is coming out and it's flying around. Like we mentioned, some of the haulers are just not recycling. So some of them are blatantly taking recycling and putting it in the same truck, same container as their garbage. So that happens. So I think it's not just the education piece, although it is important. And it is tough, because I think a lot of people grew up with separating everything, and then we made a switch to single stream, which improved the gross, the sheer amount of recycling, tonnage of recycled material being recycled, but then the sorting problem became even greater. So yeah, it's tough, and different counties do different things, right? So the education in Delaware County might be different than it is in Otsego or Montgomery County, and so how do you build a curriculum around that? It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll add in here that, we've been theoretically recycling for, a very long time. The 1970s really was, that big push towards conservation in the home and taking responsibility. We have in our town locally access to, recycling containers through our village, which there's constantly trash that's being put in those recycling containers. And if people aren't responsible about it, then they're going to lose the convenience, which is going to hurt everything kind of across the board. It bothers me that we're still trying to teach about recycling at this point in time, but it's more and more and more important every day for all of these reasons. I think that's all I will say on the matter.
And I think people think that, well, they'll just take care of it. They're making tons of money off it anyway, or, it gets sorted somewhere else. And I mean, yeah, it does get sorted somewhere else, but it's not a moneymaker anymore. I mean, people think that we're just, we charge these tip fees and the user fee and this, Tyson mentioned earlier that recycling costs more than garbage. We pay about, everything said and done, county labor, transportation, cost to deliver the material to the MRF. We're spending on Otsego roughly $140 per ton of recycling material. That's almost double what we spend on trash. Almost, not quite. So just to give you a perspective, it's the better the material is, the easier it is for everyone else down the line. Easier it is to sort it, more likely it is to get recycled, and then the in the long run, if everyone starts doing that right, costs go down. So
Right.
There is one more question that came in about tetracycle containers, which I believe are typically like they say they're recyclable on the container, but I think from research that I've done, they're not recyclable in our counties here. Is that correct, Shane and Tyson? They're like
I would have to look up.
Yeah, they're like the cardboard drink or like chicken stock containers that are made. I know there's confusion. I've had confusion on them as well. They're called tetracycle containers, and I believe they are lined possibly, which is what the issue might be for ours.
I don't have a necessarily definitive answer, but generally what I say is if there's a material like that is a mixed material, it's got some sort of lining on it, generally no, it's not recyclable. And then, obviously companies can sort of mess with this, but if it has a number and only one number, then it's a good chance recyclable. But generally, if it's multiple materials and you're like, this is not plastic, but it's not paper,
right,
probably not recyclable.
And then the same person asked about TerraCycle, if they can schedule directly with TerraCycle, or is it mostly contract for larger efforts? And I believe that the answer to that is you can do TerraCycle independently, but I think you want to fill the box, and then it might cost you to send the box back to them, which is why it's usually like a communal type of thing. So sometimes you can get your local schools involved and have the school be a point in your community where everybody brings in, containers or what are some of the other things that they do through TerraCycle? So chip bags and things like that. So you can do your collections through like a school community, and then maybe fundraise to offset the cost of mailing it back. There are some things where, it might be a pre-postage paid box to return ship it in some cases, depending on what company you're working with. But I think they want that box full. So if you can't fill a box of that one particular material by yourself, your best bet is to make it a communal resource and effort.
Can I just ask one last question? Because we've been talking about the issue of it costs so much more to recycle than it does to just take care of the garbage. What do you guys think is, or are, maybe there's more than one thing, what do we have to do to change that, to create incentives for people to want to develop their own recycling company? Do we have to ask the government to do some subsidizing? I don't really know the answer here, but you're in the middle of it. Do you have some thoughts about how we could get this to be done better?
I'll let you go first, Tyson, if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. I'll go. There's a couple ideas, I think, generally on a broader scale, state and nationwide. I think one of those, which I mentioned, is extended producer responsibility. So if you basically, if you say, well, we want to push, the simple way to think about that is we want to push the cost of recycling onto the manufacturers. The way that actually is enacted can have different ways, it can be some sort of subsidy program, buyback program. There's different ways to do it, but extended producer responsibility. Another one is to mandate materials with be purchased with a certain recycled content. So for example, the Northeast Recycling Council has a program for governments called it's called Government Demand Champion Program, I believe, where governments that sign on commit to buying a certain percentage of content that has a certain percentage of recycled material. So I think part of the problem is demand. You have to create demand for recycled content. And Tyson mentioned, he touched on, it can be cheaper to, like with glass, to just make new glass, right? And that's true with a lot of different materials, especially when the plastic and other materials are not sorted well, they're dirty. It just makes more sense sometimes to produce raw materials. And there's a whole, it connects in with the price of oil. When the price of oil goes up, I might be getting this backwards, Tyson, but the cost of recycling goes down. The China sword policy that was touched on had a big effect on U.S. recycling, especially for counties like Otsego that are almost entirely reliant on international markets. We don't really have local uses like Delaware County has more established. So I think we're just in a period where things are taking time. We just had a shock to the system in 2018, and it's only 2021, and we had a pandemic that happened. So I think things will come around. I think markets will improve. There are paper mills, I believe, opening up in New York. So,
do you know, as a quick question, like other countries, when you look at their packaging laws, like other countries are and have been so much more progressive in like mandating environmentally friendly packaging for products. Is there anything like that on the horizon that you know of in the US?
I think it's a really big jump for the U.S. We're a capitalist society. Like we don't, you keep the government and private companies separate. It's hard for us to make that jump. Although I think that's a lot at the crux of the issue, though. They're packaging materials as cheaply as possible to improve their profits. So they don't necessarily want somebody telling them to use this more expensive packaging because it's better for the environment. Like the companies don't want that, and then the price of their product would go up then too. So maybe the consumers don't actually want that either. But that would really solve a lot of the problems, though, because we're kind of, I look at consumers as somewhat as a victim. They're buying what they're being sold. If the things that they were buying were reusable, if they would last longer, if they could be recycled, or if they were made of recycled content, then we've solved something.
Right. Well, thank you guys so much. This was greatly informative and lots of nice comments coming in. For those of you who are still with us tonight, Environmental Action at Home is our presentation next week, February 24th at 6:30, and that is with Dr. Kevin Schultz from Hartwick College. He'll be here just to talk about kind of the household and climate and carbon and things we can do. And then on March 3rd, we have the ins and outs of electric vehicles, which I'm really looking forward to because it's just such a hugely fast changing marketplace right now for electric vehicles. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing about that. Anything else that either of you would like to say in closing?
I'd just like to thank you guys for your interest. Usually throughout a year, I do dozens of tours. And I think that would be my response to the one question about the curriculum. So in Delaware County, the curriculum is kind of built into a lot of schools. They come and visit our facility, and outside interest groups, they come and visit our facility, and we walk them through, like, this is how our process works. This is how we handle it. And so I'm just excited that you guys are excited.
Well, maybe we can schedule some kind of a trip there once things change a little bit and things open up. I think it would be a pretty interesting trip.
And I'll just say, yeah, just thanks for putting this on. And on Tyson Stores, I've been trying to get our own county board members to take that tour since I've been working for the department. So maybe someday they'll get down there and get some ideas. But thanks for putting this on, Susan and DOAS. And
you're very welcome. We hope to see you all soon. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Just do it unless you're chatting.